having worked with a coach and um, going through IPEC. So I feel that it is my responsibility to remember to hold space. And I love that you brought up it's not about you, Yana, when we're listening subjectively, because that was the same conversation I had in my head. I was holding space for someone who was experiencing grief for something I've caused, and so as I'm holding space, there's two different energies within myself going on. One is the ego that wants to express guilt, and so the ego that wants to express guilt, that's not about the other person, and the expression of guilt would only be to satisfy my own ego. So,
Yeah.
because that'd be making it about me. So then I had that same conversation with my ego. It's not about you. This is someone you love expressing emotion. Just hold space, and the best gift we can offer is not guilt or apologies. The best gift we can offer is witnessing another experiencing whatever's hot in his or her heart.
Yeah.
Witnessing another experiencing their own process.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant when I said like experiencing their process and understanding their process and how they're thinking, which is like our chance to see more of who they are, because through conversation, through words, through their feelings and emotions that they're experiencing and sharing with us, it tells us more of who they are, and in the sense of what they like, what they don't like, what they value, what they don't value, what they can tolerate, what they will not tolerate, and the sheer array of emotions they're actually able to experience. Because as we I had this other thought when I was walking in the morning. It's like, how did it go? It was, we all go through different stages in life. Because I kind of like quickly snapped through my stages of life. Is like when I was young, I loved and enjoyed the attention, and I dressed differently. That would bring attention to me, right? Not crazy, but it still brought attention to me, even if it was some bright red type of shoes, right? Whereas now, I have been noticing that I have been hiding, and in the way where I don't really want to be noticed and seen. So, in saying that, we all go through the stages where we want to be seen and not seen. We want to be heard and not heard. We want to experience life to the fullest and we don't. And it comes to us at different times and we go through it. And the whole point of that is for us to understand more of who we are, give us more content of our world that we have created for ourselves, because we are each living in our own world. And that's why each and every one, the who of each and every one of us is different. The whoville of who's, right? All of us are different, and we simply cannot be compared.
Something that came to mind as you were speaking about the different versions of yourself,
Yeah.
and it's that, yeah, we absolutely shapeshift and shed layers and try out new avatars of ourselves. And something to keep in mind, because it is internal, is that it's normal for the outside world to still perceive us as the previous versions of ourselves for some time.
Yeah, it takes time for them to catch up,
Yeah, it takes
to get with
time.
the program.
It takes time for the people around us to acclimate, because if we're, let's say, we are the kid who wants attention up until the time we're 15, and then or 18, and then we experience a shift, and it seems like to the outside world suddenly we're different.
Yeah.
If we want to hide or be more reserved, and the rest of the world will still say, hey, be that person again. This makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's part of the process. And it just came to mind because I was thinking about something that came up yesterday about my brother, who when he began playing guitar when he was 12 and was a performer, like had brought so much enthusiasm and had stage presence. And then when he was about a senior in high school, that shifted, and he kind of expanded beyond the illusion of superficial performance and being showcased. And therefore, he was going through this shedding of that performer, and was seeking authenticity. And during that time, I remember, myself included, the family were all like, hey, what about that? Like, you're not doing that anymore. Like, do this, like, put on the show. And I remember him saying that was a different Mike. And I remember my parents being really confused and thinking, like, wanting him to be a psychiatrist. And but I remember understanding what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
That was no longer the person he wanted to be. And but what I was reflecting on yesterday was just how alone, how isolating it can feel to shed those layers that don't serve us and that are no longer authentic to us, and the outside world is still trying to push us back into the former versions of ourselves.
Well, yeah, because first of all, when we are starting to shed those layers, we don't even know who we are. We are again searching in a forest trying to find ourselves. So we're already having difficult time internally with ourselves because we're lost and confused and disoriented. Perhaps we might have been stung in a way, and we're still kind of like living with those effects. And then adding other people on top of it that are questioning this new path, which we have no idea what it's about, where it's going, or any part of it. So that's what the other thing that adds to feeling alone and isolated, because you're lost, confused, and then another person is questioning your lostness, confusedness. I just made those words up. and therefore it almost like makes us want to retreat.
Exactly.
And go back into that shell and to recuperate from that extra stinging that we just experienced from everyone else. That, I mean, they're really just trying to understand, but they don't know how to express themselves and how to allow that to be seen as for what it is, which is curiosity.
And to see each stage of growth objectively.
Yeah, and not want to have some kind of expectation from it, because it's not their journey. I mean, as parents, I understand. And when you were talking, how all of a sudden people change, it made me think, oh my God, have you been talking to my daughter? Because I feel like she has changed like this.
Wow.
She's like so sweet, so polite. Look at me, look at me. And then next day, sweatpants, my sweatpants, by the way, because I gave her some of my clothes. We share clothes. She's 10. Besides the point. Sweatpants, like extra large sweaters and t-shirts that are like my husband's t-shirts and my old t-shirts that used to be my husband's t-shirts, right? Like the bigger, the better. And then I'm entitled to my opinion. I never told you that. Where did you learn that? I mean, I have no problem with it, but I mean, I did a little bit, but finding the balance between the old self, the old child that we had, with the new one. and allowing, because that one is still there, right? Something happened and the shift happened, and this is now, it's like, this is who I am, even though still trying to figure out who that is, which continues. And then it's like, I know one phrase that was said to me as a newborn mom all the time. The moment you get used to your child and their routine and everything about them, they're going to change on you. Don't get comfortable. Don't get used to anything. They're going to continue to change. And it is very true. And the same thing within ourselves. The moment that we become content with who we are, guess what happens? We are given another opportunity to work through another obstacle, if you will, and become a different version of ourselves. Sometimes it happens daily.
Yeah. I know, for me, it's pretty much based on the moon and the planets. So I never know what I'm going to get. But
at least you know it's coming.
I mean, expansion itself, growth can be can happen exponentially. Like for example, when my life was more dictated by the status quo, growth was really limited. So I spent 7 years working at my former company, and think of that, like how much did I really grow in those 7 years, and that professionally. And yeah, I received promotions and bigger bonuses as I went along, but growth wise, not much was happening. And even promotions didn't come with a whole lot more of engaged energy into the content of the job and the nature of the job.
Well, it's a way to control, it almost sounds like.
Yeah, it's a way to pacify me.
Yeah.
To keep me just plugging away so they don't have to train someone new. And and then 3 years ago is when I left, and my growth since then, because it's a whole different type of growth. It's a mind, I will say body, mind, body, and spirit, because I have been connecting even deeper with my body. And so it's a mind, body, spirit kind of growth as opposed to professional, as dictated by the status quo. And the growth from within has been exponential. So every shift, like I feel like I'm going into caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly mode, like every couple of months, because of how growth happens past a certain point. Like once we become comfortable with doing the shadow work and facing our blocks, we just start accelerating. So
Yeah.
what I have noticed though, at that point, once I let that identity from the time I graduated college until the time I left corporate America, which is about 10 years. So that was an identity I'd been building for 10 years to win the approval of my family, really, to win the approval of my parents. Being completely honest, there was no internal motivation behind that 10-year path in corporate America. I saw that this made them feel so safe, because what I recognized is they just wanted their kids to be safe, and my parents thought a job like that would keep me safe and secure and stable. But it didn't, because there was a giant void in my soul. So deviating that far from my authentic path, I was never going to be safe and secure. But of course, we don't know that, because we're programmed to keep the machine going. And that's how the status quo self-perpetuates. So I recognize that shift, that 10-year identity that I had built, that I just said, oh, like that's not me anymore. Shed it. threw it in the trash. Not really, because I have reconciled it. There was a lot that I learned, and a lot about leadership, which is what I do now. But I understand how for everyone around me that seemed like a drastic shift, and there was a lot of concern
Oh yeah.
that I'd gone crazy.
I was just thinking of that word crazy, but then isn't that the reason why we live in the world that we live now is because people stepped out of this box that they were put into, and they did what everyone else thought was crazy and added a ton of value to this world. Like you and I would not have this conversation if somebody did not accept their craziness according to other people. We would not have lights, we would not have cell phones, we would not have any of this. We would still be living in a cave. If it wasn't for that crazy person that said, I want to go over there. I don't want to live in a hole anymore. I want to build my own hole. Or before they build another hole like that we're living in now, it's like, no, I want to live in an open place where I can come out and I can see everyone I love and care about.
Right? That's how we evolve as a species.
Yeah, thank you, crazy people.
Yes, yes. I will cheers with my cacao to that. Thank you to all the OG crazy people for
Yeah.
a way for us to step out of the cave and be like, hey, this way, and face the ridicule. I think it's on the second law of being disc where Bruce says, he quotes I think his name's Schopenhauer, a German philosopher, who said that all truth goes through three phases. First, it's ridiculed, then it's violently opposed, and then it's accepted as truth or accepted as facts. Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
You know, Arthur Schopenhauer. You know the one I'm talking about. That's what crazy people go through. First, we're ridiculed, then we gain momentum, and we're violently opposed.
Yeah.
And then everybody joins us. So.
Yeah, and in that moment as well, that individual that's going through those stages themselves, they are uncovering more of who they are because they discovered who they are. And here, nobody seems to be liking that because they are the new person. Whoa, 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 we're used to this one. Why are you changing? Go back. And he's like, no, no, no. I own myself. I know who I am now, even though maybe not 100%. And then everybody else is like, no, 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 no. And then eventually, oh, okay, I get you.
Yes, it does. Oh, and people do catch on and are cool with the shifts eventually.
Yeah.
And there is an excruciating period in between though, because when we do shed those layers, oh, we are in such a vulnerable state, and the people around us have no idea how much work it took for us to align with that part of ourselves and uncover our authenticity and excavate our own wisdom. It takes so much to get that clear on who we are. It's so vulnerable. It's excruciating because we have to face all the times we deviated and why we deviated, and all the times we fooled ourselves and lied to ourselves. We go through a lot to align with our authenticity.
Yeah.
So if anyone watching is in that process, hold yourself with grace and compassion for any deviation that might occur in response or reaction to outside perspectives projecting fear. Because I'll give you an example. When I first quit drinking alcohol, I something that my dad and I had bonded over was wine. And for years, we bonded over wine. And we belonged to wine clubs, we'd go to wine tastings, and then I quit. And one day he was serving wine around the table outside on my parents' deck. And he stopped at me and he was like, still not partaking? And I said, nope, still not partaking. And he held the wine bottle and he was like, waste of a good palate, and then continued pouring. And in that moment, my spirit was like, okay, bye. I felt deep separation. My spirit just took off and I sat there. It was my my stress reaction was freeze. I was paralyzed. And then the thought started flooding of, how could he not be happy for me? How could he shame me? And I took it very personally because all I felt was shame. And then I journaled and journaled and journaled until I got to the truth of the fear he projected, which is fear that he's losing something we share, losing a bond, losing his drinking buddy, not necessarily the drinking aspect, but a buddy. That was something we connected with, and it was something he enjoyed showcasing, that his daughter has a great palate. Like, he liked having me order wine in front of his friends, and like do the tasting and stuff. Like, he liked all that, like all the show. And I held compassion because I could understand, like, there was a time when that was a part of my identity, which is also when we first shed our former selves, we usually hold a lot of judgment of our former selves. So, but those former selves are reflections of all these others who were vibing with that. That was like what the tribe was vibing with, but we shed it and we're moving on. So because and it's natural to reject that before we get to the point where we can reconcile with our former selves. So in that initial stage of rejecting our former self, we will also see through that lens of rejecting all those reflections of our former selves. So I was rejecting my former self, who did attach my identity to the wine clubs and the prestige of it or the status of it. That was a part of my identity that I adopted to win approval and what I thought was being an adult, really, because that's what I saw the adults doing. And so then I went through a period of rejecting her, like me. I call former selves her. I was rejecting her so much that then I was rejecting my dad, rejecting my brother, like judging them. And so that, just keep in mind, that's natural. And once you heal that reconciled part of, once we heal that reconciled part of the layer we just shed, and reconcile with it, then it becomes easier to view those other former reflections through the lens of compassion and understanding.
No, I see exactly what you're talking about when we start to shed our layers and we are then forced to almost like take that layer that we just shed and look at it one at a time. And sometimes we don't like what we see. But in order for us to move forward, grow, and become who we were meant to be, that acceptance is necessary. Acceptance of ourselves, our previous self, and recognizing there was absolutely nothing wrong with any part of our previous self at all. And just accepting ourselves. It's almost like being grateful for all that we have. And only once we are fully grateful where we are, which is still included, kind of attached to who we were, that is when we can start to have more.
Yeah. And this might be a great time to reflect on how we reconcile with and accept those former versions of ourselves that we shed.
Yeah, there's many, many different ways that, honestly, for me, there were times where I just needed to sit down and cry about it. And really, like, fully, truly understand as much as I could with the new consciousness I had gained, which continues to grow, by the way, right? And the new awareness I had about myself and the current self and in the past self, and even going back to my childhood. And to be honest, I'm the type of person that I don't like to dwell on the past, like in the negative past, right? In the bad past, in the negative past. I did for a while, and it did not make me feel good. And that is when I went through the stage of looking at all of that I had shed, right? So in order for me to be able to get to where I am now, I needed to go through seeing all of these. And this was difficult. It was hard. It was painful. And I cried a lot, and I worked through a lot, and I found different ways to distract myself from constantly looking at all my layers and judging them. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't look at the negative parts of my life anymore, because what I did is as I looked at them, as I worked through them, I got to understand each and every one, everything that I went through, and in a way of what did I learn from it? What did that experience teach me? How did that feel? How can that benefit me now? How can that benefit me in the future? And really looking at it as its own entity and accepting it. And then, okay, so now I understand it. I understand the ins and outs of it the way that I'm meant to understand it. Now I have a choice to continue to dig in and dig it deeper and make it bigger than it actually was. And again, that's not to take away, because even losing the twins, that was extremely difficult. But I don't look at it, and I don't dwell on it, and I don't dig and think and experience and picture their faces holding them in my hands. Like I don't go and I do that, because if I do, I instantly go to level 1 and I am miserable, and I'd rather not. So instead of that, kind of like how would I call it? It's like reframing it. So instead of this is what happened, this is how horrible it was, what did I gain from it? Right? What did I learn? How did that contribute to who I am now? Right? And looking at it from like as if somebody else was looking at it, somebody who looked at it objectively and with detachment. Mm-hmm. So rewriting the story in a way, right? Little by little, rewriting a story to the one that I prefer. And our mind actually does do that. That's why children, so I'll give you a perfect example. When my dog passed away on my 30th birthday, the kids were in a basement, running around playing, and the dog was running around playing. Okay, now when my daughter tried to retell the story, it is far from the truth, because she saw the dog hit its head and fall, which was not the case at all, because I was there and I watched the whole thing happen. And that's the thing the mind does. One of my clients as well, she had so basically she had this memory where like she was scared of like wooden spoons, because she had this memory that she was beaten with a wooden spoon. But then when she went into it and started asking about it, that was not the case. What actually happened was her brother put a wooden spoon in the blender and it broke, and from that, this was created. That's our mind, right? Even this was when she was young. Like now, if we look back at our own memory, there's a lot of things in there that might not be actually true, because it got twisted around because of dreams, because of movies, because that's why I used to work at the bank, and we got robbed while I was there once, and the first thing they do is to separate everyone. Why did they do that? We want to talk, we want to share and express, but in talking and sharing and expressing, we are exchanging information, and it alters what actually has happened.
Wow, yeah.
So same thing here. Even our past experiences that we've gone through that were so horrible, so horrendous, we can choose to alter it any way we want to. And it becomes, because what we're after really is feelings and emotions. That's what we're really after. That's what we want to alter. So altering one experience and another and another and another, we all of a sudden look around and we have beautiful green luscious grass around us as opposed to dry, dead, frailing grass.
Yeah. Yeah. That's there's so much packed in there that
You know?
that I think well, one of the things that I think a lot of it relates back to is what I learned, the best lesson I learned from healing PTSD and trauma, is that the trauma loops get caught in our emotional right brains, and the our mind in the present doesn't know if we're experiencing it emotionally, doesn't know that we're not actually experiencing it in the now.
Yep.
And so emotionally we relive it. And so just as you, when it comes to shedding those past layers, um, what has helped me is, well, acceptance and those types of questions. What was the value in this? What did I learn? And which is so difficult with trauma.
Yeah.
We get there though, and as we become more experienced with that, we are moving the experience from the emotional right brain into the more logical, evaluatory left brain. So even hearing you speak about the loss of the twins, I've heard you more and more speak about it from this evaluatory, like almost scientific perspective. And it feels completely different from when you express from the emotional right brain. And that's exactly how I've worked through trauma is
You hear my kids, eh?
yeah.
Talking to some people, socializing, playing games, just like.
I hate this game.
You hear him swear? I did not teach him.
But yeah, that's like that's the key right there. And um like there was a time when I couldn't even speak about my experience in corporate America because there's so much attachment and judgment of my former self. And I can speak about now after having some distance and having healed so much from that time. I'm able to speak about it from the left brain. And same of my time with my ex-boyfriend who was super psychologically abusive and caused a lot of my PTSD. There was a time where I could not speak about those experiences without reliving them and feeling the same things in my body, like bracing, not breathing.
Yeah.
And now, not only can I speak about them from a place where I perceive the value in that journey, but also with so much love for that time of my life because of the container it created. Um, I read this poem that spoke of sorrow, the depths of our sorrow, creating this just a bigger container for us to experience joy. So that's also how I have learned to reconcile with trauma or reconcile with anything that I've disowned or been afraid to look at is by any of the painful emotions, and just by seeing them as the what is expanding the container, so that when we do feel joy again, the container is that much wider for us to feel that joy. The pool of joy is that much bigger, and because we've been pushed to one extreme on one end of the spectrum, that we get
Mhm.
to experience the other end at that equal and opposite extreme. And so the joy is that much greater and sweeter. So that's just something else I keep in mind when reconciling, just keeping that dichotomy. Like there's value in all that happens. That became there's value in all that happens. That's one of our core principles at IPEC. But that became my mantra to heal trauma. I just continuing to look for the value.
Yeah. And it made me think of this quote: we create the world that we live in because we each live in our own world, kind of like what we started talking about in the beginning. Um, and the world is created through feelings and emotions, which basically means that if we want to create something in our life, feelings and emotions must be involved and feeling it at all levels we possibly can. Okay, that's how we manifest things into our life. So, in saying that, when we are going through a really difficult time, or when we have gone through a really difficult time and we are replaying these events and we are talking about it and we bring ourselves back into that experience because we're jumping timelines in that moment. We are right back there where we were, feeling that pain, that excruciating pain, and those emotions and everything that's flooding our minds and our bodies. And what happens? We are bringing it into the now. We are asking for more of that in our life. And we will start to see more of the evidence of that in our life in different areas of our lives. And that is why I realized that because feelings are emotions, and we are the only animal, like the only species on this planet that have this gift, these are the things that are our most valuable assets, is that what I would call them. And in if we bring all of them in and we know how to use them, how to um, use them to our advantage, to our benefit, which means that it's not to take away from what has happened, but it's to reframe it and allow it to be um, something empowering, something strong, something beautiful. Because if I did not go through that loss, I would not have the two that I have now. And there's simply, I like, if I had them, I would know this, and I'd rather have gone through that and know this, right? And feeling good about it, feeling happy about it allows more of that in my life now, and it affects their energy as well, which makes them feel wanted in the space that they're living in. But if we're constantly looking back and dwelling on the ones that we have lost, then the ones that we're currently having, are without even consciously understanding, because energy just travels and moves and is exchanged, that gets exchanged and they're feeling a certain way, but not unsure why. Even if we're always telling them they're the best thing in the world and we love them, but there's still that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
Yeah, and something else that came up as you were talking is that just about replaying these experiences in our heads and feeling it every time we replay it, is that it's also helpful to keep in mind that there is a reason that we do that we replay these events, whether it's we're addicted to pain or something that was really helpful for me was once I learned the advantages to level 1 energy, I could witness myself seeking these advantages. So if you have not had a debrief with myself or Yana, um, what you learn, what we explain in the debrief, there's advantages and disadvantages to every energy level. And the advantages at level 2 is that level 1 is that when we are in that mode, when we are resonating that frequency, we don't have to take responsibility for ourselves or our actions or our lives. Other people feel sympathy for us and express sympathy, and often because of that, from that place of sympathy, they'll do things for us. And so just keeping that in mind and not judging, just objectively viewing it. There's nothing wrong with that. There is not good or bad to do that. Or to use that energy for those purposes, because there's sometimes in our lives when that's where we need to be seen.
Yep.
Sometimes we just need to be seen in that struggle, and it wouldn't be authentic to present ourselves as joyful if what we really need is sympathy and to be cared for.
Mm.
And it can be hard to, there are different ways of saying, hey, I need to be cared for right now, but we're not equipped. And if we as humans, it's totally natural to use those lower energies to signal. It's almost like a signal to the people around us. It's an energetic signal, like, hey, I'm low. I'm gonna sit in this ball and cry until somebody cares. And so it's totally natural to use those levels of energy for that result. And so I'm not suggesting not doing that or skipping that. I'm just offering this as so when we are there, we're witnessing why we're doing it, and so that the next time we're just aware, and it just gives us more choice. And with that choice, you can say, yeah, I'm gonna sit here and cry and grieve and feel pain and suffering because then I get any of the reasons that I mentioned above, any of those advantages. So and just being aware. It's and we all when we are in that place, it feels like we're alone.
Mhm.
So I just also offer that as it's so common that we all experience it.
Yeah.
We all are we all are unified in experiencing that full spectrum of human emotion.
Yeah. And at some point, they might feel like we don't have a choice being there, but that's where awareness comes into play. Once we are aware we're there, I, I, I believe that that's the biggest difference. Because when we're in a certain place and we feel like we have no choice, that's because we're not aware of what other choices are. That there's actually even choices, because it's just so restricting and numbing be,
Mm-hmm.
being there. And I do the same thing. I choose to be at level one or not, because I know the advantages of it and I know the disadvantages of it. And I know that if it works for me and I get what I want, because at the same time, I'm all about both parties winning. And I know that if I get what I want, that the other person will learn something and will benefit from it as well. So therefore, both parties are winning. So it almost sounds like sometimes I might be fake level wanting it because
It's part of, as you were speaking, I'm thinking, it really is all just a game, and it's okay, and it's not necessarily fake. It's your avatar is experiencing the level one. It's just your higher self is still able to witness and recognize that it's healthy to move through the emotions that way.
yeah.
So
And that way I'm not experiencing the full depth of level one. And I don't need to, because I've been through it, I've experienced it, I've lived in level one for quite a few years. So I don't need to go to the full depth of it to understand it and use the advantages of that level. But I do so by choice. And mind you, there are days, no matter how perfect we might seem to the outside world, I have days where I am on level one and it's really, really, really hard to get out.
mm-hmm.
And that's when I understand that, okay, I have been doing way too much, putting way too much on my plate. And now I'm experiencing itis, after I eat a lot and experience itis. And this is a time for me to heal and recuperate and digest.
And that, I personally find that is such an understandable and um just available use of level one. When we need to rest, we might not notice that it's time for us to rest. We might not notice that we've taken on so much energy from others. Maybe we were around someone who was feeling level one and we absorbed it and we're not aware of it. There's so many reasons to contract to that place because it's there. Really, level one and two are there to protect us and keep us safe. So if we've been caring for others and holding space for others and we haven't given ourselves time to hold space for ourselves, we might need to contract to level one, create space for ourselves because what level one does is it pushes people away. Yeah. I mean, unless it's someone who knows how to care for us and
level four.
Sure, yeah, unless we're around a level 4 person. So and even then we'll test them. Even then, when I'm at level 1, I will test the fuck out of level 4 people.
Yeah.
I'm thinking my mom especially, but I will test them out. I'll see, okay, how much you really love me. How much can you really take of this like miserable attitude right now?
Yeah. And then also going back to the who of this whole entire video that we keep going back to, being a level 1 teaches us more about the who of who we are.
I've learned everything from level 1.
Level 2 does the same thing. Mm-hmm. And this is where the debrief itself, the Energy Leadership Index assessment and debrief process, it allows people to simply really understand more of who they are and how they're showing up based on all of these different energy levels. And for a lot of people, that's all they really need, is to bring awareness, because that's what it also does. It just brings awareness to the who, and the rest is really done behind the scenes on their own. They're trying to digest all that information, because it's a lot of information as well. And most importantly, trying to understand how they're showing up on these bars and how these bars are showing up in their life in different situations and different circumstances and in life in general.
Yeah, it's really, it unites knowledge with feeling.
Yeah.
So it gives us the knowledge base to evaluate our feelings and then choose. And that's the key to wisdom, because then we have the wisdom to walk ourselves through these feelings and hold space for ourselves. And then the more we practice, the more we're able to unite those two hemispheres of our brains. Mm-hmm. Knowledge and feeling, that's really the key. So yeah. I am hoping to wrap this up so I could have some time before the coven. Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say. I look at the time; it gives you about 20 minutes. And by the time we say our byes, maybe 15. But yeah, and then I will be going because, as I mentioned to you, I'm doing my first webinar, so I'm really excited. Last night I stayed up, putting all the kind of like little notes, thoughts, ideas, and stuff like that onto that I had from paper, digitalizing it, and I started making a PowerPoint presentation. I told myself I'm just gonna go on there and I'm just gonna wing it. And then I came across something, I started reading it. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. In the resources, by the way. Yeah, in case you're interested, I can point you in the right direction and you can adjust it however you want.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, energy index.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, energy leadership index. So I basically started doing that yesterday, and as my husband, because we were also refinishing our closet, I've always wanted organized space, and I realized that it wasn't going to happen unless we actually did something about it, that I wasn't just going to open my eyes one morning and boom, everything is done. As much as we'd like that. Yeah, so I'm going to go and finish my prep for the webinar tomorrow.
Yeah. So. What time is the webinar?
It's going to be at 2:30 Eastern time, which is my time. And I said that it's going to run up until about 4, but 3:30, 4 o'clock, we'll see how many people show up and all that.
Is it on Zoom?
Yes, it's going to be on Zoom. I shared I did IGTV little video. I also posted it in my Facebook group. I posted it in my personal page, my business page. I think I like really put it everywhere. I made a picture of um, yeah, of just the Zoom information, stuff like that, and what it's about. And I mean, it's the first time, right, that even doing the marketing part of it, which over time will evolve. So
You're
those,
doing so great. I mean, this is so great. You're doing so great. I'm so excited for you.
and you get to watch me evolve over time of how I show up. Really, that's what it is.
Sacred. Like watching any human evolve is so sacred, and it's such a pleasure and a gift to watch you evolve and witness you. I know how far you've come to be hosting your first webinar now. So this is just a true moment of acknowledgement and celebration that like you are crossing the threshold. And I know how much resistance there is because once you cross that threshold, you start attracting clients and the responsibilities grow. So I'm just so proud of you. And
Yeah, that's the scary part that I'm choosing not to focus on because then I'll deal with it when it happens.
exactly.
Yeah, because
I know that's been your resistance to growth professionally, and so I just knowing that, and it's such a relatable resistance to growth, and so just knowing that, you deserve to be so proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Do that. It's like walking through a brick wall. So
Yeah.
I see that, and I'm just so
While the gremlin sits there and tells me, no, not yet. You're not.
Go back into hiding. What are you doing?
Go back under your rock.
Yeah.
Go back in the cave.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, you go and enjoy your circle time.
With more women.
Yeah.
We do. All that divine feminine energy. Can't get enough of it.
At least it's the one that empowers you because there's different kind of feminine energy. Some of them I have noticed that
so hot.
do the opposite.
Yeah, divine versus imbalance, but yeah. All right, as you said, 15 minutes.
Exactly. Okay.
Time for another deep, raw, real conversation.
Yeah. Never planned. I mean, we just started talking, and then as we're talking, okay, click record because this sounds like it's gonna be a good one.
We're getting into it. Here we go. Blast off.
Exactly, the rocket has taken off. So love this. Yeah, an awesome way to start the week, honestly.
For real.
A nice bowl of ice cream. Why not? Okay, so until next Monday.
Yeah, and I'll see you on your webinar tomorrow.
Awesome! Yay!
Much love. Thank you so much, as always.
Okay, bye.
Bye.